of most Americans and is able to express the realities that so badly need expressing, while all the other candidates take meaningless rhetorical positions or no positions at all on the things that matter most. I'm Jerry Day, television producer in Burbank, California.
Look at the obvious media bias in the chart below. Throughout the month of January, Ron Paul received slightly less coverage than the lowest candidate on the chart, Fred Thompson. And this is when Ron Paul is the most popular candidate on the internet, far above the others. In fact, he continues to receive slightly less media coverage than Thompson, even after Thompson withdraws mid-month. At the end of January 2008, after enjoying for months many times the media coverage, John McCain manages to edge out Ron Paul in internet popularity. In spite of this media bias, however, Ron Paul continues to maintain a competitive level month after month after month to this day.
It's the Fox News debate that's going on, and Ron Paul was not invited, apparently because there wasn't enough room at the table. Literally, at the table, there was not enough room for him to sit down and debate. So that's what's going on right here. So he's not there. That's why we're here debating it. I'm a college student, Cal State Fullerton, and we try to do some things locally at home, canvas locally, but this is the major thing for me. And politics is new to me, but he makes the most sense out of any candidate, out of any person I've ever seen, and so he really makes me want to go out there, find new information, and really get into politics and find out what's going on in our world. So that's why I'm here.
Ready to appear on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. The 10-term Texas congressman was asked whether he was upset over being excluded in Sunday's Fox News Republican presidential debate. Here's what he had to say.
I realized that they really had some property rights ability there, and I wasn't going to crash the party. But, you know, I've been trying to figure out what to do, and I thought, well, maybe I ought to sue them. And what am I going to sue them? Well, I've decided what to sue them over, and that is for fraud, because of this fair and balanced idea.
In March, after all the other major candidates had withdrawn and only Ron Paul and McCain were left in the Republican primaries, the media tried to portray Ron Paul as having withdrawn from the race many different times in many different articles and stories. All of these assertions were untrue.
On Hannity, we have a Fox News alert. Fox News has just confirmed that former Carter White House Chief of Staff Hamilton Jordan has passed away. We don't have any details as of now, but we'll bring them to you as they become available tonight. Governor Rendell, I know you probably knew him well.
Sure.
Now,
he was a very bright and able guy. It's a shame.
Why would they fail to even mention Ron Paul's best showing yet on the day of the primary? The reason is that the polls were still open and the voting was still happening. By omitting Dr. Paul from the screen and from the conversation, potential voters for Dr. Paul got the impression there was no reason to vote. The pattern continues May 20th during the Kentucky and Oregon primaries, where the same tactics were used to ignore the results while polling stations were still open, only mentioning the final numbers the next morning in a small and quiet way. In Oregon, despite this media blackout, Dr. Paul had built on his momentum, setting a new record with over 17% of the vote. Also, during the month of May, MSNBC develops their new political spoof called Hardball Sideshow. With only 4 candidates remaining in the race for president, they only include 3 on their carousel, leaving out Dr. Paul, though he was still in the race. They've already picked the candidates they wanted on the stage. Even to this day, MSNBC runs this same cartoon several times daily. So why, if they did not include Paul while he was in the race, do they still include Clinton when she's out of the race?
From Ida, distant but decent second place, Ron Paul with 24%. That's one of Ron Paul's better showings all year, which will certainly fuel the fire of vocal supporters who want to see their libertarian hero speak at the Republican convention this summer.
Even with all this media bias, Dr. Paul keeps gaining a higher and higher percentage of the votes. While the media try to get people to ignore him, he goes from 15% to 17% to 24% of the vote. Something exciting is clearly happening, but the media acts like nothing is happening. This media bias, of course, doesn't just apply to Dr. Paul. but to McCain as well. See how Mr. McCain is complaining of the same thing.
Exactly what the McCain camp claims the Times is playing, accusing the paper of publishing the Obama op-ed and stiffing McCain, and noting that the op-ed's editor was once a senior speechwriter for a Democrat, Bill Clinton. Critics say McCain's problem goes far beyond the Times op-ed, suggesting the media isn't giving him enough airtime to compete fairly. Consider this. Network anchors and reporters are following Obama's every move in Iraq and Afghanistan. In the last 4 months, McCain has gone abroad to Europe, the Middle East, Canada, Colombia, and Mexico. No anchors tagged along. Some networks didn't even send reporters.
This has been a very cleverly stage-managed trip abroad in which Obama is doling out interviews to not just the 3 network anchors, but other television anchors and correspondents. And it is allowing him to dominate the dialogue, dominate the world stage at a time when John McCain is struggling to stay in the headlines.
CNN sent correspondent Candy Crowley with Obama, and John King covered McCain on his recent Mideast trip. According to a group that follows this stuff, Obama gets more than twice as much coverage as McCain on the broadcast network's weekday evening newscasts, 114 minutes compared to just 48. Same goes for the covers of Time and Newsweek. Journalistic fascination or media bias? Randy Kay, CNN, New York.
Let's check the Google trend analysis now to see if Mr. McCain's complaint is valid. Indeed, we see here that for the entire month of July 2008, Obama goes from slightly more media coverage than McCain to twice as much, peaking especially while Obama makes his tour of Europe and the Middle East. The complaint is somewhat valid in that McCain does get less news coverage. The pattern is real. But it doesn't explain why, when McCain gets slightly less news coverage than Obama, he also gets barely half the internet searches. But add Dr. Paul to the picture for July, and there is definitely an anomaly. Notice how Dr. Paul has basically no media exposure compared to McCain or Obama. In fact, his news reference volume is virtually flatlined with the base of the chart. Yet somehow, even with no media coverage showing in July, he is still being searched on the internet almost as much as McCain. What would Dr. Paul's internet popularity be if he got equal coverage? Here is one final chart on Google Trends. This one compares just Ron Paul, Mitt Romney, and Mike Huckabee for July. We see here that when all media coverage is roughly equal, as in the second week in July, the internet searches for Dr. Paul dwarf those of Romney, and well, there are no searches showing for Mike Huckabee. Even in mid-July, when the media give Romney 10 times the media coverage of Dr. Paul's internet interest is still over 5 times higher. If Ron Paul were to get equal media coverage to McCain and Obama, he'd likely be getting many times the search volume than either of them.
Tonight, we welcome presidential candidate Ron Paul.
Folks, we'll be right back with headlines and presidential candidate Ron Paul. Hey, I'm going to say something about Ron Paul right after this when we get back. Welcome back. We got a show tonight. Presidential candidate Ron Paul. Let me tell you why Ron Paul is here. Now, this may be, no, let me tell you. They had this Republican debate in New Hampshire, okay?
All right.
They did not let Ron Paul in the debate. Now, I understand if you're like, no. Let me just say what I'm saying here, okay? Now, I understand if somebody's like a fringe person, but you know what I'm saying? He's third. He's tied with Giuliani in New Hampshire, and he's raised more money than anybody else. So there's got to be a reason why Fox would not let him in the debates. I don't know whether it's his politics or what it is. So I called him up last night, and I said, let's find out today why you weren't on tonight. So he'll be out here, and we'll discuss that. We'll discuss that. Yeah, see, hey, even if you don't like somebody's politics, it seems really unfair to me to exclude them for some reason other than, like, you're just too obscure, because he's certainly not obscure. Be right back with presidential candidate Ron Paul right after this. Everybody, my first guest running for president of the United States. Among the Republicans, he's considered a long shot maverick, but he's the #1 GOP fundraiser right now, and he's moved up to #3 in many of the latest polls. And don't forget, you know, Huckabee was unknown. Remember, he came here the night before Iowa, won the next day.
That's true.
The power of the show, ladies and gentlemen. Please welcome Ron Paul.